Good evening, Des Moines. Welcome to the Doc and Lefty program here on webcast1live.com. My name is Lefty, and you will notice if we were to pan around the studio, and typically we don't do that in the show, that the conspicuous, life-shattering absence that is Dr. Patrick Petroche. In fact, I got to say that probably the entire show has been shut down with Doc's absence, but we're going to persevere. We're going to soldier on. And usually in these kinds of situations, I have some sort of musical guest that I line up prior to this. We had somebody else that was coming in, but he's running a little bit late. So hopefully we're able to have him on and make sure that we can have some interesting conversation for at least the second half of the show. Anyway, there's a lot to talk about. There's always a lot to talk about. The weather has been great. I recently attended a wedding, but you don't want to hear about my personal life, the way that the Doc and I miss him. I got to tell you that I miss him. But anyway, some of the big things to talk about today are the elephant in the room, or should I say the fingers in ears, holding of the breath, stamping on the floor elephant in the room. That is the giant Republican shutdown of the federal government. You know, when I was in high school back in, well, I guess it would have been middle school now that I think about it. I was in middle school for the most recent government shutdown about 17 years ago. And 17, 18 years ago, I think it happened in 1995, 1996. And Bill Clinton was in office, and Newt Gingrich was the Speaker of the House, and they got into a staring contest over the budget. The longest government shutdown in history ensued, and then Clinton went on to win the 1996 election over Bob Dole. The Republicans lost seats in the House. In fact, there was a net loss of seats. I think the Republicans picked up in the Senate a few seats, but the off-year election is usually the year that the party not in the presidency picks up a whole bunch of seats in Congress, or at least has some kind of net gain. And that didn't happen in 1996. And one of the things that people pointed to at the time, different polling and different other sorts of measurements, is that they blamed the Republican Party. Specifically, they thought that Newt Gingrich was a gigantic crybaby. In fact, there's a picture that I saw today when I was kind of reading some of the things that have been written in these last couple of days about this, of Newt Gingrich as a big crybaby with a rattle and a diaper and kind of jumping up and down because he didn't get his way on a certain deal. And you will notice, if you're listening to the different right-wing media outlets that are out there, I won't name any names, but we know who they are, that the folks like to talk about 1995 as if it happened a different way than it did. They like to say that we actually had a successful election in 1996, and we got Medicaid or entitlement reforms, welfare reforms, and we got a budget passed that was lower than what the Democrats wanted, and different other things that completely ignore the fact that the House of Representatives lost seats. Bill Clinton was elected to a second term, and the country blamed the Republican Party. And shortly after that, Newt Gingrich was ousted as Speaker. Now, he had a lot of other problems besides just sort of presiding over a federal government shutdown. But it is what it is. He was out after a few more years, and it was kind of a persona non grata in the party for a long time after that. Now, this time around, it feels a lot like the same thing, only it's a little bit more, I don't know how you would even characterize it, because you've seen a lot of more of the left-leaning folks call it, or sort of compare it to terrorism or holding things hostage, or we don't truck with that kind of hyperbole on the Doc and Lefty program hardly at all, unless Doc and I are taking shots at each other, and that's just kind of goes with the territory. It's part of the business. What I would say is, this time around it's a little different, because this time around the Republicans, they just can't deal with the fact that they had an opportunity to elect a Republican president, elect a Republican Congress with a conservative Supreme Court, and repeal a law that was passed by a Democratic Congress, by a Democratic president, and then was upheld by a conservative Supreme Court. They just can't get around the fact that the Affordable Care Act is law, and they didn't win the 2012 election. And so rather than just a sort of a nuts and bolts fight about the budget, they are tying the funding of the Affordable Care Act to this whole funding of the government and in a different but yet related way to the debt ceiling. Some things that just you wonder to yourself, why can't we figure this out? Why can't we? And what the political costs will be. Now, we are going to delve into a lot of those kinds of questions, plus a lot more on foreign policy over this next hour. So I'd ask you to stick around, and please call 855-244-0077. I'm flying solo, folks. I'd love to talk to people that have some thoughts about this, because when I start just kind of talking, I've been told that I get more and more interesting, and we definitely want me to stay at kind of a medium level of interesting, or else Doc will come back without a job next week. And so we definitely don't want that to happen. I certainly don't want to have an awkward conversation about how the show just kind of got away from him. So, but we are awaiting our special guest host, Benji Cunningham. You might remember him from a show that we did several weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago at this point. It was over the summer, about sort of race relations in the United States with respect to the Trayvon Martin case, and a lot of different kinds of things. Benji was a very dynamic guest, and we're really happy he's going to be here. He's been texting me while I'm giving sort of the rundown of the show for tonight, and he's on his way, and he'll be here very shortly. So we're really glad to hear that. I also want to talk a little bit about Syria. We've been talking about Syria nonstop on the show, and so I know that folks might be getting a little bit tired of it, or might want to, that maybe it's such a big story that you want to kind of carve it up and maybe try and understand it in different kinds of pieces. But we've had some new developments in Syria that are very, very positive from my perspective, at least. And I am sort of interested in talking to folks with different perspectives about whether they think this is a good policy position that the United States has taken, whether or not the UN resolution that's been passed recently is a good idea, if it's going to be effective, and whether or not the American government, whether or not the Obama administration and Secretary Kerry specifically can kind of take this as maybe a foreign policy win. And I got to tell you, the administration could use one. Their foreign policy has been bruised and battered over the last couple of years, and looked it's been looking very, very confused. And so you'd like to hope, at least for the humanitarian crisis' sake, that our government has kind of stumbled into something that maybe is able to work out and prevent and help to prevent some sort of political reconciliation, so that country can kind of get itself back together. We're also going to talk a little bit about the seemingly thawing relations with the Iranian government. The president recently, as was widely reported, has had a phone conversation with the Iranian president Rouhani. And people who've been a listener to the show understand a little bit about where we like to talk a lot about foreign policy, and I should probably save a lot of this stuff when Doc is back, because he's kind of the foreign policy observer on this program. But I definitely have some thoughts about Iran. I know that Benjamin Netanyahu has come out recently saying that the Iranian charm offensive, as he calls it, is a sham, and that President Rouhani is a wolf in sheep's clothing, I think is what he said. But we'll delve into that a little bit later. But please give us a call, 855-244-0077. I know we got a lot of conservative friends that watch this program every week, and so I'm a lone lefty in a pond, and I'm a sitting duck. So if you guys want to give me a call and we discuss some of the issues we're going to talk about on the show, that would be great. Otherwise, we're going to take a short break, listen to our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
from the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the second segment of the program. We certainly do appreciate all of our sponsors that make this program possible and keep the lights on here at the webcast1live.com studios. And honestly, folks, you couldn't ask for a better spot here right in the central area of Des Moines in the Skywalk. It's right in the middle of where everything is happening. Now, there's not a lot happening at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday night in downtown Des Moines, unless you count nearly getting run over by buses that are trying to make their times from the bus depot. But other than that, we certainly do appreciate being here. So, as I said, if you didn't catch the first 10 minutes of the show, wanted to let everyone know that Doc is not here today. He's out doing secret spy missions for various foreign governments, A-team style, and we hope that he's safe, and we will welcome him back with all kinds of stories next week. But for now, we are talking some domestic politics. We're going to talk about some foreign policy. I gave that rundown, and I kind of want to start with the government shutdown. That's the big story. We found out yesterday late yesterday and early this morning that the Congress could not come up with a budget deal that the Senate, and we sort of knew that in that last week when the Senate sent back the House's budget proposal with their own proposal that fully funded Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and that was rejected, obviously, by the House. They couldn't come to any sort of agreement. So we have a listless federal government as of today, the start of the new fiscal year. And from some of the reporting that I was reading today while I was at work, that means that 800,000 federal employees are on furlough, basically, until they can get this thing going again. But that Social Security checks obviously would still go out, that different military expenditures would still happen. Basically, the government shutdown, and I'll try and explain it as best I can, is it affects, well, as a Democrat, I guess I would say that most of the federal government is essential, and I suppose a conservative would say that none of it is, but that it's sort of the non-discretionary things are funded, and that the government starts to prioritize as to what it can fund and what it can't. Now, I'll try and give a little bit of a history of how we got here in case folks haven't been reading the newspaper or watching any of the news over the last couple of weeks. The Congress has not been able to pass a budget in a very, very long time. Budget acts are constitutionally required to come out of the House of Representatives, but the Senate hasn't been able to do much over the last several years, and so the government has been funded by things called continuing resolutions. And these continuing resolutions are kind of these stopgap budget measures where the two houses, without passing a formal budget that's signed by the president into law, come about and say, hey, you know what, we're just going to mutually agree to keep funding the government. And this time around, coming up to the end of the fiscal year, the House Republicans, and not even the leadership of the House Republicans, a subset of the House Republicans in the Tea Party caucus decided to say, you know what, we're not going to do that this time around. We're not going to do that this time around because October 1st is when the Affordable Care Act, nicknamed Obamacare, goes into effect. And I guess they forgot The Affordable Care Act was passed in 2009, I believe, 2009, 2010. And they've had 3-4 years to get ready for it, and apparently they forgot. And so a few weeks ago, they started making noises that they weren't going to agree or pass any continuing resolution to fund the government unless Obamacare was completely defunded, and implementation of Obamacare would then not be effective. Now, that would require a bill that would have to be passed by both houses of Congress, that would then have to be sent to the president's desk for a signature. I think that the Republicans also forgot that the result of the 2012 election was that President Barack Obama was reelected, that the Democrats kept control of the Senate, and that the House actually, even though they retained, the Republicans retained leadership of the House of Representatives, that if you calculate it from a pure raw vote tally, they actually got fewer votes than the Democrats did overall in the House elections of 2012. So this idea of we're going to defund the Affordable Care Act was a completely ludicrous idea that had absolutely no way of ever working or ever being successful. But for a House of Representatives controlled by a Republican Party that has voted 41 times to symbolically repeal Obamacare without any practical political effect, you think to yourself, these guys, you got to admire their spirit, I guess. Give them a P for participation in government, or lack thereof, I suppose. But so it had no chance of passing, and had no chance for any sort of compromise when the president says, hey, hold on a second. We had a debate about this. It passed the Congress. I signed it. It was challenged in the Supreme Court, and it was upheld as constitutional. Then I ran on the Affordable Care Act of 2012. My opponent, Mitt Romney, ran against it, saying things like on day one he would begin work on repealing Obamacare, or using executive orders to prevent certain aspects of his implementation that he has control of. And that platform lost. The president was reelected, and Obamacare was confirmed by the Supreme Court. And so the president says, this is just not going to happen. I'm not going to unwind my signature piece of legislation for my first term, something that the Democratic Party has been trying to do for generations, at least since the Truman administration. So the Republicans said, fine, we'll let the government run out of money. We'll let the government shut down unless you agree to defund Obamacare. Now, the spin is going to be interesting, and I've been getting regular text updates from my special guest host Benji Cunningham that he made really good time from his position about 10 minutes ago. So we're going to take another quick break, and we'll be back. Hopefully Benji will be in the studio, and he and I can delve into the political disaster that I think this is going to be for the Republicans. Maybe not in the 2014 election, but structurally going forward for the next several election cycles after this. You're listening to webcast1live.com, the Doc and Lefty program. We'll be right back.
Petrosian Associates, how can I help you?
Petrosian Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Petrosh, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back, everybody. We're talking government shutdown today on the Doc and Lefty program. We're talking about the politics of it, the rationale of it. We're talking about a lot of different things with respect to it before we move on. And I'm sort of I'm vamping on the government shutdown because our special guest host is minutes away from getting here. He's in the area. We know that he's going to be here. I'm not making him up, and I can't wait to talk to him about this. But if you want to give me a call and chew me out for having a lefty position about the government shutdown, then feel free to give our phones a ring at 855-244-0077. It's 855-244-0077. Or you can get a hold of us on Facebook at Doc and Lefty. We podcast the show. It's up on YouTube within hours of the broadcast, so you'll be able to kind of check it out then. Or you can find me on Facebook. Send me a message. Tell me what a great champion of the liberal cause I am, or that I'm ruining the country. Either way, it's always a good conversation. Our website is up also at www.docandlefty.com. Once we figure out exactly how to do the certain things that people do with websites, like blogging or having content on there aside from just the show, then we will be bringing that to you. It's just days away from fully being implemented, sort of like the Affordable Care Act was just last week. Now we see that a lot of that stuff might not happen right away because the Congress just couldn't get its act together, couldn't come to some kind of agreement, and it's fantastic to watch some of the spin from both parties, but honestly, the spin from the Republican side is just the coolest to me, because it's Ted Cruz on Meet the Press on Sunday talking about his position. And if you remember, Ted Cruz stood on the Senate floor for 21 hours doing things like reading from Green Eggs and Ham by the laudable Dr. Seuss, talking about how the Affordable Care Act is going to be the death knell of the country. I wonder if, to prepare for that faux filibuster, Senator Cruz listened to one of Ronald Reagan's old records decrying the evil socialism that is the Medicare program, about how decades from now people will talk and discuss about America and how she once was free. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's the gist of what Ronald Reagan used to say about Medicare. Now, the Republicans have been sort of on the wrong side. Well, from a political standpoint, I don't have anybody to debate the merits of these programs with right at this moment. So I'll just kind of talk about the political fallout. The Republicans, in a large part, due to their opposition to the Social Security Act under the Roosevelt administration, Medicare and Medicaid as it was passed and then refined by the Johnson administration and subsequent administrations after that, really paid political prices. In fact, in 1994, the House of Representatives went over to Republican hands for the first time in 40 years, and that was due in large part to the fact that people liked the programs that the Democrats had put into place, helping out old and poor people, helping out folks that needed medical care and who couldn't afford it or were disabled in some way. So it was just, you see them kind of face planting and running into these things time after time after time, and you got to wonder when they're going to wake up and realize that the country is moving on without them. And you know, I'm going to stop right there and welcome our special guest host, Benji Cunningham, to the studio. Benji, I got to tell you, it was just, I was riffing for nearly a half hour because I was keeping on the government shutdown because I wanted to talk to you about this, folks. Benji, how are you doing?
Better than I deserve, my friend. I apologize that I'm late, but you know that we've got to talk about this because I am fired up about this.
You're fired up about the construction on I-80?
Well, I guess that's.
I mean, those are jobs, my friend.
They're jobs. Let me tell you how the state of Colorado actually does these jobs. They do construction, and they do a project, and they start it, and they go 24 hours until it's done, and that's how you help people be more productive.
I see.
I'm not bagging too much on the labor unions, but I'm telling you, when you start something, you finish it, which will basically transition us to the to the government shutdown, because I just think that's absolute travesty.
Okay? So let me just reintroduce people to Mr. Cunningham. He was here a few months. It was a few months ago at this point, I think, was the last time you were here, and now with your official second visit. You are now an official document friend of the show. So applause. Absolutely. But I wanted to especially talk to somebody with more conservative credentials than I have about this whole thing, because I mean, I just spent the last 20 minutes talking about the kind of the liberal perspective and doing some tongue-in-cheek blaming of the Republicans, but really this whole thing is everybody seems to agree, even the folks that are doing it, that shutting down the government is a foolish thing to do.
It's an absolutely foolish thing.
Cost us $1.2 billion 17 years ago, the last time we did it, to get things started back up again. Going. And before we got into the blame game, I just want to kind of get your perspective on the whole thing.
So here's my perspective, and this is something that I've talked about before. I follow politics. I'm not interested in running for any type of office, but if I were to ever serve my country again and run as a senator, there'd be two things that I would do, and then my service to my country would be done. Number one, I'd have term limits for every single one of them. So I think a lot of those people, Republican, Democrat, and Independent, they make some jacked up laws. You know what? They need to be held to account. So they just can't go spending their time being in basically a career politician to where they never can feel the laws and feel the pain that we out there feel with some of their shenanigans. So term limits for everyone. Mm-hmm. Number two would be a balanced budget amendment. So hence comes into our discussion. You run a household, I run a household. It is a fixed income. You bring in the same amount or a little less than you kick out. That's just an American principle that we should spend no more than what we take in. And I believe that President Obama and the Obama administration has promised way too much to the American people. They've overpromised. And it's not just a left versus right, mm-hmm. Republican versus Democrat type of thing. They overpromise and they underdeliver. And when you look at his budget is $3.8 trillion. We don't even bring that in. And so we do not have a balanced budget process. So here's my question to you. Where does it stop?
Well, I have no idea. I'll start my answer that way.
So therefore it's wrong.
But here's my this is what I want to point out. I think that we can argue numbers or whatever. I think that the Senate was 3.8. The House Republicans was 3.6, and the president was somewhere else, and they couldn't. So my question is, we still only bring in 84% of that in tax revenue.
Correct.
84%.
Correct.
Even at 3.6.
Okay.
So why is the Republican Party, especially after the 2010 fiscal takeover by the Tea Party, mm-hmm. still budgeting at 3.6 or $3.5 trillion? I think that was their proposal, 3.5. I think it's somewhere around there.
Lefty, I believe that actually is a compromise, the 3.5 trillion, because that's 84%. This is where I'm saying that when you talk about cuts and you talk about how this is going to hurt people, the last time I've been cut, it hurt. Mm-hmm. That's the natural design of it, is when you're talking about cuts. I think that we have become intoxicated on all of the things being free. Well, freedom ain't free. That's one thing. I think it is a monumental mistake of Obamacare. It is a flawed law from the beginning. It's the law of the land. You have to respect the law of the land, but sometimes you have to admit it's a bad law. Mm-hmm. You ask any physician, you ask any small business person, that law is flawed. If it wasn't so flawed, then why is it that the Teamsters are just turning and mm-hmm. saying it's actually a bad law? One. Number two, that clearly busts our budget. Why can't we take that, carve it out, and say, okay, we need to sweeten that up a little bit more? Everything else seems relatively, on point, but just taking that and suspending it. I'll tell you what it is. It's a power grab. It's a pride thing. And that's where I am, and to hear those, to hear you say the Democrats are at 3.8 trillion and the Republicans are at 3.5 trillion. Let's see. So 3.65 and call it good. That's called compromise.
Well, no, and that's what I'm asking you. And I'm asking the central thesis of your first question about the balanced budget and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
If the Republicans want to see the government spend less than it brings in, or spend about what it brings in around, then why are they coming out and proposing 3.5 in the first place? It's because they know that they have these kinds of unfunded things
Correct.
that they have to take care of.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, and we can, and I wasn't going to necessarily argue the merits of the demerits of the Affordable Care Act, because that's already been done. That was done in 2009. That was done in 2010 when it was passed. But I want to get to that section of it here in a second.
Perfect.
Right after the break.
Okay. Perfect.
Join us about a few minutes. Check out our sponsors. Thanks a lot.
Owner and General Manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm Administrative Manager.
I am the Senior Technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. But is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is Lefty, the Doc and Lefty, sitting here with special Doc sit-in and friend of the show, co-host Benji Cunningham. Benji, thanks a lot for coming. We do appreciate you making tracks to be here. Benji actually texted me about 5 minutes before airtime saying that he was in DeSoto. People from the neighborhood know that DeSoto is that's 10 miles west of where I live, and I live 15 miles away from here. So he did a really good job getting here before we turned the lights off and went home for the night. But so we're talking about the government shutdown, and we've been talking about it for the first half hour because it really is the main story in American politics right now. Although I suppose with the federal government shut down, what can we say about politics? But
absolutely.
But I wanted to pick your brain about just the straight up political strategy of this. The Republicans tried it in '95, and they succeeded in getting the government shut down and were blamed for it. Bill Clinton was reelected. The Republicans 17 years later, in my view, are making the same error that they can hold this up and say, look, we want to fund the government, but we want the president to commit political suicide by defunding his signature piece of legislation that he ran on in 2012 and won re-election. From a political strategy standpoint, Benji, I mean, just give me some of your thoughts about that. It seems to me to be just completely tone deaf to the political situation in the country.
So, Lefty, this is going to be a very rare time that I am going to agree with you because of where we are with the political temperature in our country, that a lot of Americans will turn on the idiot box and believe exactly with what whoever's speaking, they'll believe exactly what to be true. When you listen to the MSNBCs, the NBCs, the Today Show, the nightly evening news, and the way that it is spun as far as the Democrats are in lockstep with one another and the Republicans are infighting, and just the way that it's presented, you can have any person who doesn't follow politics just listens to the headline and they're going to believe that to be true and say, you know something, it's the Republicans' fault. So I do agree with you that the Republicans, from the public awareness and just from the public appearance, they will get the fall for this. The political fallout, we still will have a good, 10 months before the midterm elections? You know, and I know that is a political eternity. There's so many things that could happen to where, quite frankly, I thought it was the right time for the Republicans to stand on principle. Because that little P word, I don't know if that even exists anymore in politics. The mere fact of principle. And so this, to me, in my opinion, I feel that that was a good move for the Republicans to say, it stops here.
It stops here.
It stops here.
We have a law that was passed by Congress, signed by the president, upheld by the Supreme Court. The president ran on it in 2012. He beat Mitt Romney. It was and he said, we're going to do Obamacare. And Mitt Romney says, I'll repeal Obamacare. And Mitt Romney lost. So here's my question to you. And it's a question that I heard David Gregory ask people, and it's a good one. When is a law legitimate, Benji? When do you stop? When do you say, you know what? We had the debate. We lost the debate. We're going to move on and maybe one time present an alternative, present a fix, come out and say, you know what? Hey, my name's Ted Cruz, and rather than read from Grain, Eggs, and Ham, I'm going to stand with James Hoff of the Teamsters and say, look, this 30-hour week thing is a disincentive to employment, so maybe we should fix it.
So this is where I'm saying that when do we follow the law of the land? When the intent of the law of the land is executed exactly the way it's supposed to.
Okay.
It was sold. We were sold a bill of goods that this is what it was going to be about, and then they flipped the switch and say, well, actually, yeah, it is a tax, because they knew legally that they'd be able to maneuver and have the Supreme Court side. And again,
I think that's a stretch, my friend.
Well, I don't, because I look at that and I'm thinking that if Obama came out and said to the American people when he was in this great state of Iowa, we're going to do universal health care for every single one of you. And by the way, you know what? It's going to come across as a tax. It would have been dead, and he would have been Senator Obama, and it would have been President Hillary Clinton, and you know it. Had he come up and said exactly that right from the beginning
in 2008,
as to what it really was, is that it was a tax, people would have been like, I'm not buying.
Well, I'm talking about.
So
2012, yes, after Obamacare was passed.
I understand that, but he went to. You have to admit, he went to the Supreme Court and said, well, the political trail was one thing, and it was packaged and it appeared one way.
But he has no control over the Supreme Court, and Justice Roberts wrote that portion of the opinion. And I can tell you a little bit about his sort of, I don't know him personally, but I've read a lot of what he said, and I got to ask him a few questions when he came to Drake a few years ago when I was in law school. Justice Roberts, resting on years and years of precedent, says we've got to give huge deference to the President of the United States and the Congress. Laws duly enacted by Congress, signed by the president, get a lot of play. And so we have to figure out ways to make them constitutional. That's sort of, and that is a long tradition. That's not,
absolutely,
it's not new.
And I stand behind that.
Yeah. And so when Justice Roberts, the balls and strikes Supreme Court justice, the umpire of the Supreme Court, a guy that's trying to make his legacy as someone who is as neutral as possible, comes out and says, look, as a penalty for not buying something, we don't think that's something that the Constitution would support. However, the Constitution does give the Congress authority to tax people, and this will function as a tax against them. And that's what they did. That's not as recently as a couple of days before that decision came down, Obama was asked about it, and he said, no, it's a penalty. It's not a tax. He said that all the way along. But
Lefty,
and then
what's
the Supreme Court made the shift. There's a separate branch of government, my friend. So saying that the president has some sort of responsibility to how it was upheld. I mean, they argued in the alternative like a good lawyer would. His Solicitor General argued that it was a tax in the alternative, but that wasn't the main part of the argument. That was the argument they accepted.
Okay, so that's all right. So I will count that as a draw, because I believe that they knew, Obama being an attorney himself, being a lawyer himself, knew how to politically maneuver and knew how this was going to play out. But it's not good for the people. That's the thing I'm talking about, is that I'm saying that a small business person who owns a business, has 30 employees, it's not good for them. And this is the type of thing where it's like, you know what, I could give you benefits, but I'm going to have to actually bring down the costs. You know what, as a business person, there's that little P word that America generates and America survives off of. Profit. It's a good thing. It's an American thing, is profit. And as a small business person, and I've talked to a lot of them, they're like, this law stinks, and there's no way that I can afford to provide, first of all, benefits, nor, and I would much rather have them go on to Obamacare, okay, and because I can't put that on my books. And so that's what I'm saying. It's bad for the small businessmen, number one. And so that's that whole monstrosity of the healthcare law. I'm not saying that the healthcare question is okay or healthy. There's a lot of things wrong with the healthcare delivery in this country. There's a lot of things as far as compromise that can happen. You've heard all of the political talking heads talking about, well, we've got to pass the bill to know what's in it. Are you kidding me? That's a joke. I mean, that's seriously, it's a joke. So here's my point on that. Is I want to get back to the government shutting down and how this is going to hurt the Republicans, is that it's going to hurt the Republicans because you have this media monster that's getting behind, the Democrats basically. And the media usually leans left besides Fox. And the majority of the Americans are like, you know what? Exactly. It's the Republicans' fault.
Even though Fox gets most of the viewers. I want to take a quick break to thank our sponsor, Petrosian Associates, who provide psychiatric services to children and adults around the Des Moines metro area. If you're having issues, come in, talk to somebody. Doc Patrick Petrosian's business. I want to also thank Labinas Law Firm. That's my outfit. Free initial consultation. Come on in. We handle all kinds of things, all kinds of cases, and we definitely like to speak to you if you're having issues. I know that unfortunately we don't. My law firm doesn't fix government shutdowns. We're not in that business yet, folks. Yet we're maybe 6 months away. But Ben, I guess you talked a little bit about the media machine kind of pitching this as it's the Republicans' fault, and that there's a lot of infighting, a lot of chaos in the Republican Party. And I'd find that interesting because Chris Wallace on Fox News, a couple of days before. Well, actually, I think it was while Ted Cruz was giving his floor speech, came out and said, I don't understand this. I'm getting all of this unsolicited oppo against Ted Cruz from Republican staffers. And he was every critical thing, or every sort of negative comment that came out about Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, the debt ceiling thing, which we can get to, the defund Obamacare, the shut down the government, all that stuff, all the negative spin was coming from Republicans. So how do you say that the Republicans are not in some kind of chaos, or they're basically running around in circles over this thing?
So I agree with you that there is some Republican infighting and disagreement, just as there are with the Democrat Party as well. Not about this, but whenever you hear any type of Democrat infighting, you don't hear it
because it's not happening right now.
right now.
They have a Democratic president.
But they have a Democratic president. But whenever you hear the media will latch on and they're intoxicated by, if there's a Republican infighting, they're going to take it and they're going to run with it. But you don't hear that on the other side. There's a different type of standard. There is, I think, that what Ted Cruz did was an absolute joke.
Okay.
What did it prove?
It didn't accomplish anything.
It didn't accomplish anything except 21 hours of just bloviating on nothing. It did nothing except make the Republican Party look like a bunch of idiots.
Do you think this is now? I said at the top of the show and pointed out that in 1996, a vulnerable Bill Clinton coming out of a weak economy beat the pants off of Bob Dole.
Right.
That was a landslide election.
Right.
And that the Republican Congress, one of the few times in the last several decades that the party out of power lost seats in the House of Representatives in the midterm election. No, 98. Sorry, 98 is when that happened. Got my dates confused there. Do you think, and now this might, now people, there were some interesting polls that came out where people, Republicans, I think Fox News did a poll where 14% of Republicans approved of Obamacare. I want to know who those 14 people are.
Oh, I would,
right?
I would love to know that too.
But 22% approved of the Affordable Care Act, right? And that this thing has been tied to President Obama very, very personally, because he personally went out and around the country and sold it. And I wonder, how do you think this is going to affect the Republicans in the 2014 elections?
I think that there will be maybe minimal seats lost.
You think that the seats they'll lose seats though?
Probably a minimal, but they'll still keep control of the House.
Okay,
I think the House will still be safe. There'll be a few seats that will they'll be lost to the Democrats, but I still think that we'll keep the House.
And it's fascinating to me because I feel like there's 60% disapproval right now of what the Republicans have done, and I feel like, and I mentioned this at the top of the show. Well, and also when I was talking to Doc about it beforehand, I don't know. You're right. It's 10 months as a political attorney. 2016, we really shouldn't be talking about it. I get wrapped up in this hyper fast political speak that, I mean, I hate it when they do that on TV. I just can't help it sometimes. But I do feel like, boy, you're really going to have a hard time making yourself a serious pitch for the Republican Party in 2014 and 2016, because I feel like this is the catalyst that has been simmering for years since 2010 that's going to split the Republican Party in half. And they're going to be, and rather than be sort of a cohesive coalition, you're going to see sort of the Liberty Party, that libertarians, sort of in the regular folks.
And you're getting that. You're getting that right now.
It feels like
as far as you're going to get these splinters of the Republican Party to where the Democrats had it too.
They did. Yes, they did.
You know, this MoveOn.org, just this bitter right around when the President Bush, Al Gore,
you're absolutely right.
Counting Chads, hanging Chads, they had that too. Just these splinter parties or factions off of this. We're going through the hard time. We do have an identity crisis. What do we stand for? What is a Republican? And what's really interesting is the Republicans, if you were to ask anybody, it would come across as some blonde-haired, blue-eyed Christian. Well, you know,
not a lot of hair on you, my friend.
There's not a lot of hair, exactly. And I'm a Republican, and it has nothing to do with the God that I worship or, you know, what I look like. It's the principle. And I would ask that the Republican Party get an identity and just know what we stand for from a principle.
So we got to take our last quick break, and then we're going to move on to just some short things about international affairs that have been happening. But what I hear from you, quick in closing, is that while you agree with the principle about what's happening,
absolutely I do.
The defunding of the government, or the shutdown of the government, completely the wrong way to go. Tying all these things together, political suicide, at least for now, for the Republican Party.
It hurts the Republican Party for now. It does. It looks like a bunch of kids just having a temper tantrum together. That's what it looks like. It's going to hurt everybody.
Yeah,
but more importantly,
sure.
I think it's going to hurt the American people, and the American people hopefully will get an education to say, you know what, I can parse this thing out to where I'm like, I don't like that Republican, that Democrat, and hopefully they'll lean to the right.
Well, you'd hope that they would be able to make certain decisions for themselves, if not that last one.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be right back after this this last message from our sponsors. Really thank you. Appreciate you guys for listening, sticking around for the whole hour with Benji Cunningham. I'm Lefty. We'll be back in a minute. Thanks a lot for listening.
Bertroche and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at bertrocheandassociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Bertroche and Associates.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around here until the very end. We're going to get off the government shutdown because, and this is what I like about this program a lot. We bring on folks. Benji and I have completely different ideas about what's been happening over the last couple of days. We can come together and say that, hey, listen, folks, just knock it off. Knock it off. Stop it. Anyway, we're going to move on to just a couple of quick things. We talked a lot about the government for the main part of the show, but I wanted to pick a conservative's brain about the UN resolution that just came out, that was just passed with Chinese and Russian support about the UN going in and destroying serious chemical weapons that effectively neutralizes foreign intervention from the United States. I wanted, whether or not you thought that was a good idea, whether or not you're relieved that we're not going to have strikes now, just kind of get your perspective on it.
Yeah, absolutely, Lefty. I am absolutely relieved. I will tip my hat to the political victory, I'll say, for the president. He stumbled into it.
I think that's probably true.
I believe, with the utmost respect to President Obama as the commander-in-chief, but he yapped his mouth. He yapped his mouth for political expediency and talking a bunch of trash on, well, if they cross this red line, it's game over. They did it, and they did it twice. And so now, politically, he had to go back, and they called his bluff, and he started mustering up, impossible to do a strike. But that was all from a political perspective. So children not being bombed and gassed, that's great. I am of firm belief we've got to be really careful, and this is just an opinion of one. We got to be careful sticking our nose into the business of the Syrians, when we don't know who's really behind everything.
Well, it's just you saw recently even that a bunch of the different fighting factions have disavowed the Free Syrian Army, the actual the organized army that says we're not affiliated with terrorists, with Al Qaeda or these other groups. And I mean, Doc and I have gone around and around about this, and so if you've caught any of the show, my position is we shouldn't have done it in the first place. We shouldn't have even threatened it, because we don't do enough diplomacy in this country.
Your president, and I'm saying your president, but your buddy was the one that went ahead and started talking that mess.
There's never a good reason in my mind for a preemptive strike against any country. I felt that the whole issue was too reminiscent of Iraq for me to get behind in the first place. There was no political necessity for it. It's a civil war. It's terrible, but I'm not an interventionist Democrat. So I agree with you, but I think that what was fascinating to me is we want to figure out a way to avoid sending our men and women overseas for another ill-fated or ill-gotten war in the Middle East again.
See, this is where we disagree, Lefty, because there's a principle of it all. It's the principle of the fact that there's a threat, and if we make the call, and let me backtrack and say that I shouldn't say your president, because President Barack Obama is my president as well, and I respect the office.
That's okay. We understood.
But what I'm saying is that when you see an atrocity going wrong, we can't sit there by the principles of our country, sit sit there and know that we can make a change or an effect and save lives, I'm saying we're going in if it's worth because it's the principle of it all.
So you would have supported a military strike in Syria?
Absolutely, I would support a military strike. Because, and here's the deal: I know that it would have stirred up a hornet's nest. But if you do it in such a way, and I'm not talking some go in there and tap on them.
Right.
No, you smack them, and it sends a message that if you're going to say something, Mr. President, you better back it up. And if you're going to back it up, you better back it up with overwhelming force. Right. Because basically Iran is watching, right? And so that's what I'm saying. That I believe this whole thing is a trap. Even the thawing relationship of the Iran.
That gets beautifully into my next point. We had talks between the president of Iran and the president of the United States the first time since 1979, just recently.
Mm-hmm.
Just a quick phone conversation. It hasn't been done in almost 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know quite what to think about. I mean, this is an Iranian president who's come out and has confirmed that he doesn't deny the Holocaust nearly as bad as the last guy.
Good on him.
That he wished the Jews in Israel, especially Iranian Jews, a happy Yom Kippur recently.
Okay.
This is a guy who, when he got back from the UN,
egged.
Had hardliners throwing shoes and eggs at him, chanting "Death to America."
Mm-hmm.
But he's got the leadership behind him.
And Lefty, here's my question: are you sure?
Khamenei, he's sanctioning all this because remember, Khamenei, when
that's the next question: who has the real power?
I can't remember.
Ayatollah.
No. The past president, I can't remember his name.
Ahmadinejad?
Yeah, when Ahmadinejad came out and said things in Iran that Khamenei didn't like, he distanced, ostracized, complete, just sort of cut him off, basically.
Okay.
And cut him out from under the knees on domestic things. Obviously, they were in lockstep foreign policy-wise. All these folks do this. Rouhani comes out and says that the Jews are... we don't like them, but they're not nearly as bad. We don't.
Okay.
We think that the Nazis committed some crimes, and Khamenei says nothing about it.
Okay.
I don't want to get my hopes up, obviously, because it's one 5-minute conversation on the phone between two guys. But Secretary of State Kerry was with their foreign minister.
Okay.
They have meetings in Geneva to talk about the nuclear program. I think that it's cause at least to start to kind of feel maybe Iran isn't as irrational as we thought. They're responding to sanctions, and they want it to stop
because perhaps their people are starving. Number one, number two,
there's some political shade on them for sure.
I would say this too, that I am not, as a former Air Force officer, I am not a warmongerer.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are certain things that once you cross that line, I beg you, I implore you, please stand down. But when you call it, and you call the thunder, well, now you got it. And that's where I'm saying, as from the United States.
Do you think Iran's done that recently?
No.
Bush wouldn't attack Iran.
Bush wouldn't attack Iran, and I'm supporting it. President Obama, what he's doing, I'm supporting it. But I'm saying, like, you know what? It's a trust but verify. Good old Ronald Reagan.
Yeah,
so all I'm saying is if they come in and so they're having conversations, fine. Be on guard.
Mm-hmm.
Be on guard because, so why exactly now? Yes, there's a different leadership, but that's my question that I'm like, something, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, well, it's a duck. So I'm just saying be on guard for it because it could very well be the best intentions on lifting the sanctions, and that's the reason why they're doing it.
Sure.
It's not from the principle of, we're seeking peace.
Right.
And that's my take.
And we are seeing some things where it's probably not going to amount to anything because of that attitude. And I don't think that's an unreasonable attitude to have going into these talks because we finally got some people at the table. We've never had that since the last 40 years. That they want to have independent inspectors like in these facilities all the time.
Absolutely.
And audits all the time. And I think those are reasonable safeguards. And I wonder if now Netanyahu came out and said, don't trust him. Don't trust him. Don't trust him. Don't trust him. I mean, you can, but I wonder, do those kinds of coming out, the Iranian regime, they don't care about Netanyahu. They know what he is. They know that he's going to say what he's going to say, just like he knows what they're going to say.
Right.
I feel like that's a political push. But I wonder, does that, because of our relationship with Israel, which I'm not trying to undermine anyway, does that maybe undermine efforts in our own political system?
Right.
When you hear the president of Israel come out and say those kinds of things when we're just now starting to sit down.
No, it does not undermine it. It's something that if I've got a very dear, long-standing friend come up saying, don't trust him, I'm like, okay, buddy, I hear you. I agree with you. I got both my eyes and ears completely open.
I'll be calling you after I get out of the meeting, basically.
Well, yes, but here's the other thing that I would do too, is the independent inspectors coming in, like, you're going to open everything up, number one. But I'm still going to keep my eyes open. I'm going to be on guard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be totally on guard until they're like, you know what? We're completely convinced. And it's the same thing that like with Russia, there's a trust but verify. That's what we have to do. And like I said, I'm not a warmonger. I want to seek peace, but I'm telling you, this whole Israel-Iran struggle, Israel and Syria struggle, this has gone back thousands of years. So what makes you think that one person on each side is going to be like, but maybe they're going to turn now? There's thousands of years of history that backs this up to say, and there's so much data that says, keep your guard. And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time, my friend.
Oh,
Benji,
this is getting warmed up.
Hey, just as you're getting warmed up, thanks so much for coming. And I think
My
that,
pleasure.
folks, I don't want to speak too highly of the show. I think we fixed everything today rather than just talking about it. So if you want to share this this podcast when it's uploaded to YouTube with the leaders in Congress, the President Obama, with folks over in Iran and Israel, that would be great, because I think that they listen to this and it all gets taken care of. But anyway, I want to thank all of our sponsors. Thank Benji Cunningham for coming here, taking the time out. I will be gone next week. Doc will be flying solo, or maybe if you're in the area, you can come back again and guest host. Did a great job. And thank everybody involved in the production of this show, our producer Ryan, and safe travels. Good night.
See you. So here's the question. If you had a seat